Welcome back, everybody. It's Zach here, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. So I'll be going over 9 players that I think have a real good shot at being meaningful fantasy contributors for us that are being drafted outside of the top 125 in draft. I'm calling these guys sleepers, but these are guys that I think have a very real shot to be, effectively free for you guys in drafts and then actually contribute over the course of the season and be real difference makers for us over the course of the year. So really fun looking at these players. It's always fun to sort of look back and see which guys we talked about years before that actually panned out. Last year I highlighted Devon Achane and Tank Dell. So I think in general I have a pretty decent hit rate here. Obviously a lot of these guys aren't necessarily high hit rate players. Not all of these guys are going to hit, but if you can hit on 1 or 2 of them, it's going to make a huge difference for you over the course of the season. So really fun looking at that. Also super fun announcement here. The draft kit will be live by the time you're watching this video. It's already up on my website. You can go to the draft kit tab, download my full rankings and projections along with a 19-page, 10,000-word draft kit. It was a bit of a labor of love, but got it out to you guys. It's free for all of you guys. I highly recommend you guys do go take a look at that. And if you have any comments or anything, areas for improvement you want to give me, just let me know. I love interacting with you guys and see what you guys can do to sort of help me get better with all this as well, because it's the first time I've done that. So really enjoyed making it, and hopefully you guys can find it useful too, and take any of that information with you into your drafts, and hopefully you find that all useful. So yeah, a lot of fun here, a lot more stuff coming up, and just super excited. So yeah, let's get into the first player here. Starting things off with the quarterback position, we've got 2 quarterbacks we're going to talk about, and the first one I'm going to highlight is Deshaun Watson, and part of the reason here is just because he's done it before, and we know that if he's playing at a high level, which obviously we haven't seen it in a while, but if he's doing that, we do know that Deshaun Watson can be a top 5 fantasy quarterback, which is obviously what we're looking for. We're looking for difference makers at the position. We're not looking for guys that we can just stream on a week-to-week basis. We want to hit on somebody that can actually be a difference maker for us and really improve our odds at winning our league and making the playoffs. And I think Deshaun Watson has at least that potential in him this year. Ken Dorsey was brought in as the offensive coordinator for Buffalo, obviously being fired midseason last year by Buffalo. Coming into Cleveland here, this is going to be an up-tempo spread offense. They've obviously got a lot of wide receivers they like. They added Jerry Jeudy, so now they've got obviously Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy. You got Elijah Moore and Cedric Tillman there. David Njoku is going to be hyper involved in this offense as well. And on top of that, Deshaun Watson does offer legitimate rushing upside. He's not going to be a guy that's going to run for 800, 900 rushing yards, but he's also going to give you 30, 35 rushing yards per game. And that's really good. That's a very high floor, and it's something that's going to really help give Watson the edge he needs to potentially crack into that top 5, top 10 at the position this season. On top of that, Nick Chubb, he's obviously banged up. We saw that really gruesome injury for him last season. It does mean that this is going to be a much more pass-heavy offense, and this is a team that could compete with teams like the Colts and other high-tempo, fast-paced teams to potentially lead the league in plays from scrimmage this season, and that's what we want to see. We want to see a team that at least has the potential to put up enough total points that they actually can produce high-end fantasy production, and we've seen quarterback play from this team be very fantasy meaningful. Joe Flacco just last season was the quarterback 2 in points per game over a 6-week stretch, and he doesn't offer any rushing ability as well. So if Deshaun Watson can just play as well as Joe Flacco, which doesn't seem like a very high bar, there's obviously a lot of room for success to be had in this Browns offense. And if we can see anything close to the old Deshaun Watson, I know we haven't seen it yet in Cleveland, but he has been banged up. If he comes in this season, if he's fully healthy and plays at a high level, he could easily be a top 5 quarterback, and nobody's drafting him to be that right now. He's currently being drafted as the quarterback 23, and it's worth a shot. If you do miss on the quarterback, you just need to see what can happen there. And the second and final quarterback we'll talk about here is going to be Will Levis, and I really just want Levis to end up being the next Jameis Winston, and I think there's a lot of reasons why that could happen this season. The Titans do have an elite skill position group. They've obviously got Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler Boyd. That's a really awesome receiving trio, not to mention Treylon Burks, who's probably their number 4 wide receiver. That's an awesome wide receiver group. Figure Conquo, he's a really great tight end for you to have. Can do a lot with the ball in his hands after the catch. Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard, they're both extremely capable pass catchers out of the backfield as well. This offense is set up to be really prolific as a passing offense if Will Levis can play at a high level. And on top of that, he's athletic enough to offer a pretty significant value as a rusher. That's not something that a guy like Jameis Winston used to be able to offer. And the reason I'm comparing him to Jameis Winston is because he's a guy who's willing to take risks. He's going to want to throw the ball deep downfield. And this is a Titans team with their new philosophy, having brought in Brian Callahan as their new head coach, letting Derrick Henry walk. This is not going to be the same play defense and ground and pound team that we've seen over the last 10 years or so. This is going to be a team that wants to air it out. They're going to play fast. They're going to spread the ball around. This defense is not good by any means. They're going to have to play catch up, and that's good. The Titans are going to be in a lot of on the losing end of a lot of high-scoring games, and that's really good for the offense. You're going to often have entire second halves where this team might not even consider running the ball, and on top of that, he's the quarterback 24 off of boards. He's absolutely worth a flyer. There are going to be a lot of weeks this season where he's going to be a meaningful, at a minimum, a guy that we want to consider streaming. And I think that if things do break right for him, if he does take that year two leap, all the pieces and the situation around him are good enough for him to actually be a really high-end fantasy performer. And again, you're drafting him as the quarterback 24. You're not drafting him with a need of him being good, but he's just a perfect dart throw to throw if you do need a quarterback later on in your draft and you missed out on those top tier guys. Next, the first running back we'll talk about here is going to be Rico Dowd. There's just a ton of opportunity in this Dallas offense for running backs to succeed. Over the last several years, we've seen an average of 513 opportunities go to the running back position. That is absolutely insane. That means that there's going to be probably 250 to 300 touches available for whichever running back in this offense actually ends up being the lead guy. And on top of that, there's no clear standout in this offense behind CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb obviously is the clear wide receiver 1 in this offense, but behind him you've got Brandon Cooks, no clear wide receiver 3. It's probably Jalen Tolbert. Jake Ferguson is the clear tight end 1 here. There's not a lot of guys in this offense that are really going to demand targets and demand involvement, so there's plenty of opportunity here for guys outside of CeeDee Lamb to be meaningful contributors, and we know this is going to be a really good offense regardless of who it is that ends up stepping up. On top of that, Tony Pollard was one of the worst running backs in the NFL last season. He finished as the RB14, not the RB50 there. Rico Dowd currently goes as the RB50, so if that were to be where he ended up finishing, we would view him as a league winner, not as somebody who was a disappointment. We were just upset with Tony Pollard last season because of where he was drafted, but if RB14 is where we can get one of these two running backs in Dallas to finish, I think that's a really great spot, and the fact of the matter is Zeke just sucks. He hasn't been good for 2 years at this point. He's clearly a regressing player. He's also getting up there in age. There's no guarantee he can even maintain health over the course of the full season either. Rico Dowd should, in my mind, be the clear number 1 running back in this Dallas offense. And if that happens, you're looking at a guy who could easily see up to 300 touches and a really good offense. And there's going to be a lot of goal line opportunity. Tony Pollard couldn't capitalize on that, but potentially Rico Dowd can. And like I said, he's going as the RB50 off of boards. It feels like his floor. Even if he's in a bad timeshare here with Zeke, he'll still probably beat that. And if he ends up winning the job, he's going to be one of the steals of the draft this season. Next running back we'll talk about here is going to be Jalil McKinnon. And the reason here is just because there's a ton of opportunity in this backfield for some of these guys to catch passes. We know Sean Payton historically loves using his running backs out of the backfield, pass catchers. And on top of that, Bo Nix, their new rookie quarterback coming in, still TBD as to whether or not he's going to be starting the whole season or if he'll come in later on in the year, but typically doesn't like to throw passes beyond the line of scrimmage. I believe over half of his passes were within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage last season at Oregon. He's not a guy that's going to throw the ball downfield quite a bit. He's going to be a guy that's going to be very willing to check the ball down to the running back position, and we saw that carry over in Denver last season as well, where 3 of the top 5 targets in Denver last season were running backs. That is insane. You had Javonte Williams, Samaje Perine, and Jalil McKinnon all finished top 5 on the team in targets last year, and beyond that, Samaje Perine might be a cap casualty. There's a lot of buzz around camp around him potentially being a guy who just doesn't make the roster here. He could be a trade as well. If that happens, he's opening up 53 caught passes last season. Those could all be shifted over to Jalil McKinnon, who could clearly slot in as a really talented 2-minute drill passing down back. And we saw it last season. He showed that he can be a really high-end player. He caught about 40 passes himself. If Perine is gone from this offense, there's a real-world scenario here where Jalil McKinnon catches 70 or even 80 passes this year. If that happens, it's going to be one of the steals of drafts right now. He's being drafted outside the top 50 at the running back position. He's a good player. We've seen it before, and I know the offense isn't going to be good. This is not going to be a good team in general, but again, that could lead itself to a lot of coming from behind opportunities in the fourth quarter. If Jalil McKinnon's the guy getting those 2-minute drill snaps, you could easily see him be a guy that racks up a couple catches every single fourth quarter and ends up being like a low-end running back 2 even. I think there's a case to be made where he could flirt with a top 24 finish, and if things break right for him, that's just a huge value for a guy that you're getting outside the top 50 at the position. And the last running back we'll highlight here is going to be Jaylen Wright. And the fact of the matter is this one does need an injury to provide value, but unlike most handcuffs where you need an injury to one specific running back for that to provide value, the injury can happen to either one of Raheem Mostert or Devon Achane here. The Dolphins are going to deploy a 2 running back backfield. Neither one of their running backs is durable enough to really withstand a full workhorse workload. And on top of that, this isn't an offense that needs to give its individual running back 20 plus touches. Each one of these guys is going to get 15-ish touches a game, and if something were to happen to Mostert or Achane, and let's face it, they're not exactly the image of health over the course of their careers so far, it's pretty reasonable to say that over the course of the full season, we're going to have some weeks where at least one of those two guys is banged up. Wright is going to slot into a really important role in a really elite offense, and he just fits right into this system in Miami. He's got elite speed, one of the fastest running backs in the combine this season, and should just play really well if given the opportunity. They're obviously going to do a lot to get him in open space. That's the whole point of this Dolphins offense, and I think he'll succeed if given the opportunity. So if there are any weeks where Jalin Wright is starting or is one of the two running backs that you'd expect to get time just because Mostert or Achane are injured, I think I'd probably be ranking him as a top 24 running back in general, just because, we're ranking both Raheem Mostert and Davian Wix as those guys. I think as top 24 guys right now, I think Wright could easily be that same caliber of player if one of those two were to go down. So he's a really great handcuff option. We don't know exactly how great he's going to be, but I believe that especially in this system, he's going to fit right in. And if there's an injury to one of those two guys, he could be a real difference maker for us. He's being drafted as like the RB 56 right now. So really great value there if you want to take a shot there. Moving on to the wide receiver position, we'll start things off with Rashid Shaheed, and I want to preface this by saying that I promise you guys I'm not a Saints fan. I know I talked about Kamara and Chris Olave as potential lead winners. Now I'm talking about Rashid Shaheed as one of my favorite sleepers, but the whole reason for that is just because I think this is going to be a really condensed offense. We're going to see pretty much Shaheed, Olave, and Kamara be the only three people that really touch the ball on a regular basis. You can sprinkle in some Taysom Hill there, but that's about it. All the reports out of camp so far are that A.T. Perry is not blowing the coaching staff away. He's not taking that year two leap, and Shaheed is actually one of the best deep ball threats in the NFL, and he just hasn't really been a full-time player so far in New Orleans. He averaged over 10 points per game last season despite only playing 46% of snaps. If we see him get up closer to a 70 or 80% snap share, we could easily see him flirt with a 13 to 14 point per game stat line over the course of the season. That would make him a low-end wide receiver 2. I think that really is within the range of outcomes for him. Obviously, it's going to be bumpy. He's a deep threat. He's not going to be a super reliable weekly option, but we do know this is going to be an offense under Clint Kubiak that's going to be a lot more motion-friendly. Shaheed's clearly a guy that they would want to involve in that motion. He's a guy that you're going to want to give a running start because of how athletic and how fast he is. So I think we could see Shaheed really take the top off of defenses a lot this season, and his ADP of wide receiver 58 is simply way too low. He's going to be an awesome weekly flex play for us this season. He's got huge weekly upside. I think there's a shot where he just potentially puts it together and puts up a whole good season, and getting it that late, that's super awesome. And on top of that, there's just the beautiful little cherry on top that he is going to be an elite kick returner. He's one of the best kick returners in the NFL, and if the kickoff rules really do result in significant changes in terms of how many kickoff return touchdowns we're seeing, if you're in a league that potentially rewards you for having kickoff return yardage, stuff like that, Rashid Shaheed could easily be a huge producer in leagues like that. So just keep that in mind as well. But even without that, I do think Shaheed's in line for a really big season this year. Next, we've got Joshua Palmer, and it's really not too difficult to justify this one. He's got a legitimate shot to be the Chargers wide receiver 1. He's competing with Quentin Johnston and Ladd McConkey, and unlike those two guys, we know that Joshua Palmer can compete at an NFL level. He's been a really good player. Not great, obviously, over the course of his career, but he's shown many times that he's a capable, good option for Justin Herbert, and Justin Herbert trusts him when he's on the field. So we know he can compete at an NFL level. We haven't seen that out of McConkey or Quentin Johnston, and if he does end up being the primary target in this offense, he's surely going to return value. He's currently being drafted as the wide receiver 60. I'm pretty confident in saying that one of those three wide receivers in Los Angeles will finish as the top 30 guys. So it's just a matter of figuring out which one of those three it is. My money would be on Ladd McConkey, but you have to take him in the 7th or 8th round. You can get Joshua Palmer significantly later than that, about 20 spots later at the receiver position. I think Joshua Palmer's got just as good a shot or a similar shot at being the number 1 target in this offense, and I'm very happy to have him on my roster as well. I think he's going to be a reliable flex play if we need it, and I think there is ceiling above that if he ends up just breaking right this year. And the last wide receiver we'll talk about is just going to be Davian Wix here. And the thing with Wix is that I just think he's a really damn good wide receiver. The problem is that he's probably going to end up as the wide receiver 4 on this offense. So that is obviously a knock. How lucky are the Packers to be able to say that Davian Wix is their wide receiver 4? But the reality is I think he's got a real shot at beating out Romeo Doubs as the wide receiver 3. Doubs has shown that he's a good, not great player, and I think that Wix has shown that he has it in him to be a much better player than Romeo Doubs, and it's just a matter of him putting it together. Reports out of camp are that he looks great again. Last year, we do have to keep in mind, was his rookie season, but if Doubs gets beat out by Davian Wix, we could see Davian Wix as a full-time player in this offense. I'd anticipate them running a lot of 3 wide receiver sets this year, and I think there's a real path towards Wix being just the most valuable wide receiver in Green Bay. Christian Watson, he's obviously a guy who I think is extremely talented, but if he gets banged up again, he's certainly not somebody that is a guarantee to be on the field. And Jayden Reed just plays a very different role than Davian Wix. Wix is going to be a guy that gets utilized a lot more downfield as that true like X wide receiver. Reed's the kind of guy they're going to move all around the field, be a slot sort of gadget guy. And I think that there really is an opportunity here for Davian Wix to crack the starting lineup and just be a really good player over the course of the whole season. And on top of that, the really good news about taking Wix is we're going to know really early on if this one's going to work out, because we can just look at the snap share really early on. If he's the clear wide receiver 4, 2 or 3 weeks in, you can just cut Wix because you know he's not going to get that starting role and you'll need an injury. But if we come out and he ends up playing more snaps than Romeo Doubs in week 1, you're going to know right away that you've got a really good value and something that you're going to be really excited about. And as the wide receiver 66 off boards, why not? He's effectively free, and I think that of the players being drafted around that area, Wix is by far the most talented of them. So I'm super excited to get him on many of my rosters. A really great last pick in the draft and someone that I think can be a difference maker over the course of this season. And finally, the one tight end we're going to highlight here. We had to dig pretty deep, but we're going to talk about Mike Gesicki. The thing with Gesicki is he's got a clear shot to be the number 3 target for Joe Burrow. We saw Tyler Boyd leave this offseason going to the Tennessee Titans, and that cleared up 98 targets in this offense. Boyd was actually the number 2 target in the offense last season, and we've seen Mike Gesicki be fantasy relevant before. We know that he's a talented pass catcher, a guy that can be used on those seam routes, a guy that's going to be a very valuable asset in the middle of the field for them. And on top of that, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, neither one of those guys are exactly always healthy, especially T. Higgins. It's reasonable to assume he will miss some time over the course of the year as well. And if that happens, Mike Gesicki is going to be super important to a really good offense with Joe Burrow at the helm. And beyond that, he's currently going as the tight end 28. We know he's the clear tight end 1 in a really good offense led by Joe Burrow, and I think he's got it in him to flirt with a top 10 finish if he gets a little bit lucky in the touchdown department, ends up being effectively their slot wide receiver, which is in the cards here. We could see him just effectively be Tyler Boyd, and if you get Mike Gesicki 98 targets in this offense, he's absolutely going to smash and return value at his ADP right now, and he'll be a guy that we're looking to start every single week. So I think Gesicki's got a shot here. Obviously, you're not drafting him like you need him to be good, but I think he's going to be a guy that will probably be streaming on a weekly basis, someone that we'll be talking about on waivers every week, and if things break right for him, he could be that guy that ends up having a really good year this year, sort of out of the blue. So that'll do it for the 9 sleepers that I think you guys should definitely be targeting in drafts this season. Up next, we'll be going over my guys. I'm going to cover guys at each position that I'm just absolutely targeting at every single draft, guys that I really do want to make an effort to get on every single roster I'm drafting, because they're guys that I have the most conviction in being really good this season. So that'll be a really fun video. It'll probably be a longer one. I think we're going to touch on like 15 to 16 players, and I'm going to really dive deep and explain why I'm super excited about those guys. So it should be a really fun video. Make sure you guys do get access to that one. You just got to make sure you don't miss the video upload on Friday night at midnight, so Saturday morning. And that one's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that. There will continue to be 4 videos a week throughout the course of the off season and the regular season, if not more. We might mix in some live streams and stuff here and there as well. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. That way you don't miss any of that. If you made it this far in the video, please do give it a thumbs up as well. It'll really help with the algorithm and help me know that I'm doing a good job and all that. And then, of course, I want to reiterate that the draft kit, it is free, but it is up on my website. Highly recommend you guys go take a look. I'll link it in the video description below as well. But put a lot of time into it. I hope you guys like it. It should be something that you guys can use. If you guys have any additional comments or critiques or anything you want to add to it, feel free to let me know, because obviously it's the first time I've put one together, so I'm just really doing it for you guys. Fun to do it for myself as well, but it's free. Just wanted to help you guys out, give you guys something to refer to as well. So really appreciate you guys. It's going to be a lot of fun. We got the Hall of Fame game today, the day you guys are seeing this. I'm recording this on the 31st, so the day before, but super excited to get football rolling, and we just got a lot more coming. So thanks, guys, and I'll catch you with the next one. Peace. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.